Hey, everybody, and welcome to the last IT podcast in the world. I'm David Wheat from Alt CIO Consulting. He's Darrick Johnson from Darrick Johnson, or Texas, whichever you want to choose. Hey, Darrick, how's it going?
Going good.
Good. We'll get into our hats here in a minute, but we're wearing themed hats. We'll talk about that in a minute. I'm sure the audio listeners are super upset that they can't see our hats. Probably like every episode. Hey, we've got some good stuff for you on the podcast today, but we'll get right into it. Darrick, last time we talked about the new AI DJ on Spotify, which we both like and your kids like.
Yep.
DJ X. And he features prominently in the Spotify Wrapped, that really cool. I mean, this is a cool part of their app. Don't you agree?
It is.
Tell people what Spotify Wrapped is, in case they don't know.
So they summarize your listening for the year. They make a little video about it, show what your favorite songs were, who you listen to a lot of. It's a little bit of accountability if you listen to something that you're kind of embarrassed about. It's in my case, there's a lot of songs my kids really like on there. So YMCA featured much higher on mine than it would have
normally.
Had an assistant picking songs there. Yeah.
Right.
But no, it's a very cool summary of what you listen to and makes real dynamic video and presentation.
Yeah, this comment will be relevant for exactly about 5 people in the world, but I got called out on LinkedIn because I didn't have enough funk in my top genres. I posted my top genres on Spotify and said, on LinkedIn, and I didn't have enough funk because I was sort of famous for, we always had Funk Friday in my IT department, and we listened to Parliament and, Funkadelic and all these other things, and they didn't even make my top genre, and someone remembered that and called me out. So, be careful about making your data public because you might get shamed.
Yeah. By the way, December is your free month to listen to whatever you want with no Spotify Wrap implications.
Oh, they don't count December?
I don't think so. I think it goes year to year.
Because they've already published it.
Right.
Wow, that's good to know. So all your
get your nickel back in if you don't want to be embarrassed by it.
Yeah, Moby, all your guilty pleasures. Yeah,
right.
Good to know. So I thought this was funny. This is the IT angle on it. So DJ X was walking me through my Spotify Wrapped, and I can't remember which category it was. I think it was the number of songs I listened to, or maybe it was the number of artists. Anyway, the number was like 686. And he said, "Whoa, that's a really big number. It's so high, I almost couldn't count it." And he said, "This is the funny part." He said, "And I'm crazy good at counting." Exactly. That is such an inside IT, like AI,
yes,
because that's essentially what computers are doing. Is
just counting.
Yeah, and probably not related to anything. But Spotify announced they're laying off 1,500 people this week, so. Surely our friend DJ X would not be somehow involved in the shenanigans. Would he?
I mean, first, he's probably not getting laid off, right? His pay is pretty low.
Oh, AI doesn't get laid off. If the movies have taught us anything.
Yeah, that's...
Isn't it funny, like in the movies, AI or the robot or the not quite human thing always starts off as friendly?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hey, at DJ X? I'm doing the I am watching you symbol.
Are you behind these layoffs?
We're keeping it like, what if DJX and Google, make an alliance, and DJX says, "Hey, what's the Google search history of all the top executives at Spotify?
All the AI skeptics in the organization are gone."
Right. Yeah. They've been reading the emails. Oh, okay. Wow. All right, DJX. We're not sure about you as we were before. Okay. Second. Good. Anything else on Spotify Wrapped you wanted to share from yours?
No, I'm good. So I got some YMCA, and I was proud of my blend because I think 3 or 4 years ago would have been pretty much country, and I've diversified, and so had a nice little sandwich graph with 5 or 6 genres in there, and so
good for you. Good for you.
Growing
and likewise, yeah, good stuff. So our second banter topic is that the hats that we're wearing. So you've got, again, the Washington Nationals hat. That's a repeat back to back on the podcast.
Yeah.
And I've got a new hat, and if you read it, it says NASM. which sounds like the big brother of Little Nas X, but it isn't. It's the National Air and Space Museum, NASM. It's got kind of like a little jet symbol going on it. And if you look really close, do you see like it's got like starry
Ooh,
sky?
it's got stars.
Yeah, it's got like starry skies over a navy blue hat for those of you on audio only. And so we're wearing our Washington, D.C. themed hats because, not for any reason, you and I have both been there separately in the last 6 months as
Yeah.
tourists. And so, being we hit to all fields here on the podcast, we're going to give you our brief travel tips if you're going to Washington D.C. You want me to go first,
I can
or
go
you want to go
first.
first?
I
You
can
go
go
first.
first.
Yeah.
So must see places. You got to see the Library of Congress. It's kind of an effort. You got to book a ticket. It's free, but you have to try. And just a beautiful building and lots of little Easter eggs. If you get a tour guide to tell you about all the literature references and little subtle digs of like authors Thomas Jefferson didn't like get placed poorly. Just fun stuff like that. It's a beautiful building and fun stuff there.
100%. Just briefly, while you're on there, know as a tourist that some museums or places like that are timed entry.
Mm-hmm.
You have to pay anything. You have to pay for almost nothing. That's a federal museum, but you do have to probably at least the day before get
Yeah.
a ticket. So don't just. We saw several people showing up and like, what? You have to have a. So agree with that location. Good. That's a great one.
The Capitol's great. That's another
Yep.
one that easy to overlook, but we didn't do the inside tour this time, but just walk
We
around the
did.
building, the grounds. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, we did. We did the Capitol tour. This is a bonus one from me, but since you brought up the Capitol, contact the office of your representative
Mm.
from your district and say we'd like a Capitol tour, and they will book it for you. And for the record, that is the same exact tour that everyone else gets, but they book it for you. Now, here's why you do that. You can also say in the email, and we would like gallery access.
Mm.
And the way it worked with me was they said, when you finish your tour, call us and we will have someone come down and give you walk you to the gallery, meaning you're up in the balcony of either the House, I think the House of Representatives, since it was the House. And there may not be anything going on, but you are literally sitting in the chamber.
Very cool.
So strong recommend to bolt that on. And it's a little bit of hoop jumping and you have to call them or whatever they arrange for you, but they will walk you up to the gallery and you can sit there for quite a while and watch either nothing or just be in that pretty incredible room.
Awesome.
Yep. So that was a bonus one for mine. One of mine is, and yours are like very like historical, and mine's like, how can you get food in Washington D.C.? The National Mall is very long. So the National Mall is this big grassy strip. You know it from Martin Luther King's speech or Forrest Gump, but on one end, on the west end, is the Lincoln Memorial. On the very far east end is the Capitol. Kind of off of the mall a little bit is the White House, and right in the middle is the Washington Monument. And that's where a lot of things happen in Washington. On every side of that gigantic long rectangle are museums and exhibits, including the Library of Congress, which is on the east end. And it's just federal buildings everywhere. It's not like, so it's kind of a food desert if you don't know what you're doing. And there's like a lot of food trucks that aren't like good food trucks. They're like popsicles and pretzels and hot dogs food trucks. No place to sit. Don't recommend it. So here's my advice. Find the locations that aren't timed entry. And examples would be the Museum of American History on the north side, the National Gallery of Art, also on the north side, and the Capitol Visitor Center. It's not a time. You can just go in there whenever you want and walk around. Even if you don't have a tour booked, you can go into the museum. So those are 3 examples. They all have fantastic cafeterias. So even if you're not interested in art at all, walk into the National Gallery of Art, go down to the cafeteria, grab a pretty good lunch or dinner, whatever, snack, and then leave. So that's my advice for eating is find those non-time. And like the Library of Congress, I don't think has a cafeteria, but
No
some of
food in
them
the
do.
library.
Yeah, it would make sense. Also, shh, be quiet. So that's my how to eat. Like find those places and eat in the cafeteria, and they're really good.
That's a great suggestion.
Yep.
Because we saw all those kind of marginal looking food trucks, and they're both interesting and Yeah, not nowhere to sit. Don't look particularly good for you. Don't look always super food safety conscious.
Yeah, and it can be a 4 to 8 block walk off the mall to get the food you want if you don't use that little cafeteria strategy. Yep.
Yep.
You got anything else?
One of our favorite places in our trip was the wharf area on the south end of the city. Lots of good stuff, lots of good restaurants there to the food point. Um, the other one I like, this was my first trip using a lot of Uber back there. And I worked there for a summer and lived on the metro. And it was kind of nice with two kids in tow to get in a car and zip across town a little bit to see sights.
Yeah. I can't really explain this why, but my wife loves taking the subway. It's so,
Yeah.
and I don't mind it. So we were Team Metro. Metro is the name of the Washington D.C. underground subway, and we took that everywhere. So we were on team. Let's take the subway. You and your family were on team. No, let's take Uber. and there's a lot of good reasons for why you should use Uber for sure. But anyway, so my advice is similar. Stay near and it's spelled L apostrophe infant plaza, but it's a French guy, so we're going to say it l'enfant
L'enfant.
l'enfant plaza. If you say it that way, everyone's going to look at you weird, by the way. But the reason why is every single metro line you can think of runs through that station, number one.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, if you stay there, you're in the same area that you stayed, which means you're close to the mall, walkable, and you're close to the Wharf District. And the Wharf District has really good evening eats and nightlife stuff for sure.
Yep.
So l'enfant plaza, especially if you're taking the metro or if you just want easy access to all the stuff.
Yeah. Also keeps you in the fairly safe part of DC. If you kind of stay to the south and east of the mall, life is good.
Good. Yeah.
Or south and west, I'm sorry. No.
Those are so far we've done recipes. Now we're doing travel advice. We're just, like we're not just one dimensional like coding, geeks. We're
Renaissance men.
You took the word right out of we are Renaissance men. You know why? Because we declared ourselves to be so good. Also, we're handsome, but because we declared ourselves to be. All right. Awesome. That's the banter. We'll be right back in a minute with the big idea. See you soon.
Time for the segment called The Big Idea. The Big Idea. The Big Idea. Serious topic, but we'll still have fun. We'll still have fun with the big idea.
Better IT, hands in the air cause we like IT, that's great. I'm not a famous rapper, but I can help you with technology. I can show you how to pick software, I can show you how to be secure. I can take apart your broken stuff and then put it back together much better. Alt-CIO makes your IT rock. Your IT rock. Your IT rock. Time for the segment called The Big Idea. The Big Idea.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast and the Big Idea segment. Slightly different idea. There's a lot on this show, Darrick, as we both know, that's a little bit more philosophy than like deep in the tech weeds. And I want to talk about why so many corporate IT organizations end up with such a bad rap and such a bad reputation. And this has been a frustration my whole career that, I walk into people join your company, they're new, they're from somewhere else I ever met you, and they're already like down on IT. They've been hurt by IT.
Yeah.
And I've experienced it both as a leader. I've taken over departments and seen some of the dysfunction. I'm going to try to talk. So this is more a call out of corporate IT. And we're going to talk about a fundamental part about how IT can just be better or great. And you and I know, because we're on the same page, don't think what we're going to talk about is hard. But apparently it must be because of how kind of almost rare it is. Have you experienced some of what,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because, we're IT, we're in IT, but we're also customers, right? We're on both ends of that relationship. So,
yeah. And that's service, like good, high quality, good service. We're going to eventually talk about my very simple 3-part formula for what it takes for there to be a great service experience. And you can think of any metaphor you want in this, or I'm not metaphor, like parallel in your real life. I think restaurant is a good one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably going to use that one a lot on this. First of all, service on the receiving end is a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
You walk away from an experience and you say, was that good service or bad service? And there's a little indicator somewhere in your gut that is telling you, well, that is right. I mean, it's hard to pin down a little bit.
Yeah, but were they nice to me? There's just a vibe that you walk away with that was
So
good.
so anytime, and I am calling out IT, like hey, everyone in corporate IT everywhere, listen to this podcast, which I know is thousands of you in all kinds of countries. Just kidding, everyone. Like, we have to be better at this. So IT is a service organization. Now, we're more than that. We're not just the unjam your printer crew. We're also your strategic partner and your business
Mm-hmm.
partner. We're a lot of things. But fundamentally, we're also providing service when things break, or knowing things, or how to get things set up, or onboarding a new employee onto the platforms and all the email and laptop, everything we do. There's a lot that falls into service, not everything we do.
Mm-hmm.
But fundamentally, we are a service organization. And so if you don't do service well, you're going to be a bad IT department, no matter what else you do,
Yep.
is my contention. So let's talk through the things that you and I think, that my little 3-part formula, and see if you agree with it, or add to it, or like refine it. But the first component of any service experience is some level of timeliness. There's a
Mm-hmm.
time component. We were just talking off air, but you had a recent car dealership experience where the time was supposed to be 15 or 30 minutes, ended up being 3 hours.
Yep.
And you were expressing that you felt pretty bad about that.
Yeah, that made a huge difference in the feeling you walk away from that experience with.
Yeah. So there's got to be some other synonyms for this: responsiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And let's face it, like, not everything can be done in 5 minutes. So expectations have to weigh in here. If you're I don't know, building a house, the timeliness measure would be much, much longer
Right.
than if you want to go eat at a restaurant, or you're waiting for your food,
Yep.
kinds of things. So in IT speak, it's got to be appropriate for the request. Like, hey, I need to reset my password. Just for the record, stop aging passwords. Contact me. But this isn't a good one. Like, hey, I've locked myself out. Can you help me reset my password? That one's got to be pretty quick.
Yeah.
I can't work.
I can't work, and I think the awareness of that's such an acute problem. And I think, I mean, even on problems that you said they're not always fast to solve, to know someone's on it, right? To have some sort of communication back, like, here's my problem. Okay, I got it. We're looking at it. There's a big difference between going dark for 24 hours and then getting your problem fixed, or hearing immediately, hey, I heard about your problem. Tell me more about it. Okay, we'll look at it. And the solution might take the same amount of time, but
Yeah. You added an important variable that's not in my original formula. I'm going to add it on the fly. So I'm going to call it T to the C, time, and the C is going to be communication. If it isn't going to be right away,
mm-hmm.
let me know so I can set my expectations.
Yep.
Hey, I can get to this, but it's not going to be until tomorrow morning for reasons.
Yep. Back to your restaurant analogy. If you're at a restaurant and the food's taking a long time to prepare, but your server has checked on you, has told you, hey, the kitchen's backed up, it's going to take a little longer, can I get you some more water? Your service feeling is positive there, right? You know they're trying, you know there's a reason for what's going on, and versus, again, silence and here's your food, you're waiting and not sure if anything's happening.
Yeah, it's amazing how it helps when you've been waiting for a while for your food. When, like you said, the server says, "Hey, they're working on your food right now. It's going to be right up." You're like, "Oh,
yep.
okay." Because right before that moment, when you heard that, you're like, "Dang it, where is our food?
Yeah. Did they forget about us? Did our order get in?"
And then 2 minutes after, you're like, "Yeah, she's on it, right? Like, it's coming. I'm less stressed now." So the appropriate timeliness, like, we have to deliver things in a reasonable time. Now, on password resets, just back to like, that's critical. and it's an easy fix.
Right.
So, from the minute you hear about it, like 5, 10, 15 minutes should be reasonable, right? As opposed to, oh, here's a curveball problem I've never heard of before. We're going to have to really dig into that, do a remote session. That would be different. But along the way, to your point, communicate with people and say, hey, this time span I estimate to be bigger than maybe you think it is. Or,
right.
or I need to escalate it to someone, but I will make sure that they follow through. That communication you mentioned, so timeliness with communication, very important.
Mm-hmm.
So thing one, to be a great service organization, you have to be aware of that you can't just take days or hours at times to do things if it's more appropriate to do them at a different time. So you got to hit your time marks and be aware of that. Plus communication. I love that. Good. Anything else on that one?
No, I think that's, if you do those two things, you're off to a good start.
Yeah. The second one is the solution has to be the right one. Like whatever it is that you were expecting within reason, that expectation has to be met.
Yep.
I had a password reset problem. I was expecting my password to be reset within a time frame. It was, as opposed to something else, which I'll talk about in a minute. It's what if I think we should reinstall Windows on your laptop. Well, and trust me, there are IT people out there that think that, like reinstalling Windows on your laptop or reformatting your laptop from scratch fixes everything. So they jump right past the obvious solution, which is I'll just reset your password.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
Or I'll investigate it a little bit and learn more. They just start resetting stuff because, so that those aren't good solutions to problems. So what the customer is expecting within reason has to be met.
That's a big one we have in our custom development world, right? Of the customer might not know how to build it. They might not have all the best ideas yet about how to design their product, but they do have a certain expectation. A lot of times in our industry, developers will build the thing they want to build. They'll build the thing either that's easy or that's interesting, and not really focus on what's your problem and how do I make your life work there.
Yeah, very good point. While we're on solution, I want to be clear. Sometimes, because of the criticality of the situation or how many users are being impacted, you might have to do a Band-Aid fix. Or as the old timers would say, bubblegum and baling wire. It's not a great solution, but it alleviates some of the problem quickly. And here's my call out to IT. You can't just leave it that way.
Right.
That's a good first step in a good solution. We got people working again, but you probably cut some corners there and you probably did some things you shouldn't for all the right reasons. Yep. Now you need to start the process of really figuring out what the right solution is, and that might take days or even weeks, but you don't forget. Right. You don't forget that you've sort of patched it together, and people need to maybe do something every day to keep their system working. They have to manually do something every day, to keep it working, or just turn that prompt. Just say no to that prompt 8 times a day for now.
It's fine. It's easy to do that.
Yeah.
A really good tactic I've seen to do that in software is whether you if it's a support ticketing system or we have feature backlogs we're working, is it if you have to do something like that, you're not done with that first task until that you've created a new ticket or a new task, even if you're not working on it right away to fix it. So it doesn't get lost to the ether of, oh, we did this Band-Aid. Part of the Band-Aid fix is, oh, by the way, I'm entering a ticket that we have to do this fix appropriately. And that's maybe work on that in 2 weeks or whatever. But whatever the time scale is, it's not lost to whatever you remember.
Yeah. I'm going to call that a positive handoff. Okay, maybe I'm a tier 1 tech and I can't solve this problem. And I tried and I realize I'm aware of the time component and I don't want to just be digging. I realize this is outside of what I can do. So now you have to escalate it to a more senior resource or someone else. Positive handoff means, okay, I'm going to take this problem and make sure this person's aware of it. Make sure not just send them an email, get it lost, but positive handoff. Or in your case, record it in a bug tracking system or in a ticketing, I'm going to make a thing that's our placeholder so that we don't forget this. If we have
Right.
to maybe dig into it more as a team, but like don't drop it into the ether or write yourself a sticky note or say, I'll remember this tomorrow when I wake up, because you won't. But like those all play into service for sure. Like, man, there's nothing like, hey, remember that problem you had 2 weeks ago that we did a Band-Aid for and it was kind of annoying? Well, we dug in with our team and we think we've got a fix. Can you try this? And it works. Whoa. Like, the high service merit badge going right across your IT Boy Scout sash for sure. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
And it's the right thing to do.
Right.
That's the level of service you would want from a service provider that you were dealing with as well.
Right. Because if you don't do that, you really are things are just decaying, right? You had a problem, you band-aided it. Now it's slightly worse than it was before. That Band-Aid never gets fixed. You have another problem, that gets band-aided. So the user's experience is continually getting just a little worse if you aren't taking those
such
steps.
A good call out. I'm going to see you and raise you. And the more you do that without follow through, the more it becomes embedded in your IT service culture.
Mm-hmm.
So Band-Aids are fine, right? Like I've seen that, like, yeah, whatever, it works. Like yeah, it works, but it's annoying and it's not a good high quality. Sometimes you have to tell the user this is as good as it gets. Like that is the technology. You can't make everyone. But to your point, if you become the Band-Aid, like this is good enough, bubblegum and baling wire constantly, then it becomes your service level standard.
Right.
And it's okay in your IT organization to be that kind of like sort of half-baked solution, no follow-up, no positive handoff, and your users will probably not say great things about you behind your back.
Yep, and they'll be right.
And I was going to say, and I will agree with that. Yeah, and so as managers and leaders, we've got to make sure we're building that culture. It's like, hey, I know you fixed it. I've literally said, hey, how did you fix that problem? And I've heard Band-Aid. I was like, huh, all right, what are you going to do to get past Band-Aid level? Oh, I hadn't really thought about that. Well, let's talk about that in our next.
Let's
go talk to so-and-so who I know is an expert, and I think they'll figure it out with you. I'd really like to get that Band-Aid replaced with something better. Culture building for sure. Good. Mm-hmm. So we've got timeliness plus communication kind of in the same variable. We've got quality of solution, including like mid solution and good, better solution tracking and follow through. And the third main variable of my little 3 formula is a word. I have struggled to find the right word for this my whole career. And if you talk to different people, they would say different things. And so this is my take on it. This is the word I found works best for me in cultures that I like to build. Before I do that, this is called building suspense in the podcast, Darrick. So let's say you go to a restaurant and you are seated in a timely expectation, check. And you get, menus and a glass of water as expected, check. And your server takes your order, check. And you get your food in a time you expect, check. And you enjoy it. What could possibly ruin or make you feel in your gut that you had a bad experience at that restaurant?
I would think it would just be server interactions if they felt gruff or rushing you or.
Yeah. So everything else can be going right. Timeliness, communication, great solution. And if there's not this feeling that you were dealt a certain way as a human being, it is all for naught. Mm-hmm. And the word I have come up for this placeholder is kindness. And I think there's probably better words, but that's the one I've stuck with. You're dealt, you could say friendliness, collegiality, professionalism. I've chosen kindness because I think it's a very powerful word, and frankly, underutilized by human beings in normal daily life. Yep. Period.
Yeah. That's the thing that my personal image consultant often points out is kind of lacking in my industry, that, they don't have, non-IT people do not have good experiences with the IT people they've dealt with, and they're unlikable. And
let's talk about some things that would qualify as not meeting a kindness standard. So when I say kindness, I mean when someone has an interaction with your IT staff, service desk, whatever, they come away feeling positive about themselves and the encounter and the person they talk to, not negative.
Right.
The ways to destroy that, hey, IT peeps, like turn up the volume, everyone huddle around, fireside chat, huddle around the old wooden radio in the IT living room, is to assume that everyone should know what you know about IT and sort of condescend to them. Like, well, you didn't know Shift Control F Escape / would bring up that menu that you needed? Moron?
What a
Like,
noob.
yeah, like, or like the third degree. I worked at a place where, unfortunately, we issued phones to people, smartphones to people, and people drop smartphones and they lose smartphones and they run over smartphones, and so there was this constant churn of like, hey, my phone broke and I need a new one, and the person that was responsible for doing that was unkind, and so the base level approach that person took when someone damaged their phone was, let me ask you 8 questions that make you feel like an idiot.
Right.
Why did you do that? Why did you put it there? What did you think would happen? Like, of course it did. Like, we can't just keep doing this. Like, you have to be more careful in the future. They're not their place. Like, your job is to say, oh, you need a new phone. I'll get you a new phone. Like, let's make that happen. So the condescension or just the unawareness that sometimes IT has, that not everyone is like living in tech land all day, every day, and knows all the Windows shortcuts or how to do a thing in Excel, or like why my emails are not showing up in my focused inbox and they're showing up in other and I'm missing them. It's like, oh, there's this other thing called the other inbox and focused, and some of your emails are in there. Now that seems pretty fundamental to us. So when we communicate that, it's important that we're not making people feel like they're idiots because they don't know. You know why? Because they're doing other things. They're selling, they're engineering, they're marketing, they're accounting, they're operating, doing operations, and they're really, really good at that probably.
Right.
And we don't expect them to be good at tech. And that's why we have careers. Isn't it great?
Right. Yeah, we should be glad that we've got that niche. And
yeah, so if someone says, I've got a problem, here's what you say, like, oh, I'm so sorry. Let's see if we can fix it. And even if the fix is obvious to you, try to sound like it's not.
Yeah.
Here's what you can try. Why don't you try clicking on X, Y, and then Z, and then reboot, and then try these steps, and let me know how it goes. Anxiously waiting. Signed, friendly and kind IT person.
Yep. And I will say, there's, to your point of like, you have to be cognizant too of not talking down to users. That they may not know what you're suggesting, but don't. I guess you can go the other way too, where you explain things as if they don't know them when they already do.
Yeah.
So there is a little bit of careful treading there, that they may or may not know this. This might be obvious to them, but they didn't know that was the solution, or maybe they did already try that. And you can also lose a person pretty well of, well, can you go look in the back and see if it's plugged in? Right? It's very condescending, and yeah, we need to check all those things and work through those flow charts. But
yeah, that's a good point. Another way we can sort of accidentally be unkind or condescending is say, well, it works on my machine. What is the user hearing when they say, hey, I've got a problem with, and it's doing this, and IT says, well, it works for me. What's the message?
It's, I don't trust you,
or I don't believe you,
or you don't matter. There's that of, I think there's a lack of empathy there too, of it doesn't matter if it works on your machine. It needs to work on this person's machine.
Yeah. So here's a better way to say that. Let me see if it works on my machine. Yeah, it does work on my machine. So we've got to figure out why it doesn't work on your machine. Let's dive into that. Can we do a screen sharing session? There's just all kinds of ways that people do that. I'll tell you another way they do this. Drives me crazy. Someone bumps into you in the hallway. This is kind of in the before days, Darrick, when there were hallways. and you're in IT, and they say, hey, how do I do a thing? Or I've got a thing on my computer. How do I fix it? And you know how to fix it right there in the hallway. And instead you say this, can you make a ticket? Oof. That's the old that's the companies that measure IT on how many tickets they get. We talked about that.
Yeah.
How many tickets you got completed. Like, just tell them how to, or say, oh, if you've got time, say, oh, let me follow you back to your desk. Let's figure it out.
Yep.
But the whole, like, can you do a bureaucratic administrative thing before I can help you? Now, again, ticket systems are useful for things. I'm not saying that, but like insisting on a ticket for everything never plays well.
No. And if that does have to happen, that's a good, if you're managing a support desk, of if you need to get that ticket entered after the fact for trackability reasons, do it, but you don't need to burden the user with that or impede their getting help of like, hey, procedurally we need to get a ticket, but I'll walk right over there and we'll get the ticket. I'll even help you create it here at your desk and we'll work on it together. Like,
yeah, here's what I'll allow. Hey, that's not really, sometimes people don't know who does what in IT. Like you're the ERP person, but they ask you like a server question you don't know. So again, to be kind, you can say, oh, that's not really my area, but I'll tell you what, if you make a ticket, I'll make sure it gets to the right person. That would be a good thing. Or I'm heading out for the day and I'm afraid I'll forget what you just told me. So do you mind just quick, like send an email ticket so it's there for me in the morning? All, different approaches, I think, than just saying, can you please bureaucratically make me a ticket before I can talk to you and help you?
Yep.
That makes sense.
By the way, I think if you want to have a really high service IT organization, that's probably a good thing when onboarding people, to have a little bit of that cross training. If you don't have to know everything, but a good start is to know when you're approached about X, who to escalate to, who to point them towards, so they can do that, right? So it's not just, I don't do that. I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah, that's not bad advice. I sort of took a slightly different approach. I said, just send an email to support at our domain name. If you don't need to remember who does,
right?
But then you can, if you're unsure who does the thing, just write us and it'll make a ticket and we'll make sure it gets to the right resource.
Right.
Just because if your organization is big,
right,
or your staff is changing, it's impossible to keep up. So definitely, them knowing who does what is not bad, but if they can't keep it straight, you say, no worries, just shoot to this and we'll get to the right person. But both good approaches.
And like you said, as the organization gets larger, that gets less practical.
Yeah. So, timeliness, communication, a quality solution, or, taking it all the way to the end if you can, and being kind, being human in your delivery, being understanding, being empathetic, not using tech speak, not being bureaucratic, are all the ways I think that IT can be kinder and, dare I say, gentler, and sort of complete the experience. And like I said, I don't think it's hard. What is kind of hard is when you're hiring, knowing like what kind of person you're going to get, and you don't know. Right. And to the IT leaders out there, the VPs, the directors, the CIOs, I'd say if you build your culture right, you'll hire better. And if you hire people that are learning how to do some of these things, you coach.
Yeah.
Hey, this is how we do it. Hey, I appreciate that. You got back timely, but I would have maybe said this a little bit different way. And people will adapt to your culture. Like, I think kindness can at least be learned in a constrained way for work. If you've got an unkind person in general,
right,
probably can't make them kind, but you can probably make them.
You can make them pretend to be kind for 8 hours a day.
Yep, I'll take it, and you can be unkind on your own time. But anyway, culture building, I think, goes back to some of this too. That it's our expectation. We're a high service organization, and I think people respond to that. And then you get a good reputation with your users, and they are more likely to deal with you. So good stuff. Anything else?
That's all I got.
All right. Well, time for the wrap up. What'd you learn today?
Opaque pricing in software. That's a nightmare. The ERPs in particular.
Yeah. Drives me berserk. Yep. And I learned that you used to be, country 24/7 on your listening, and you've expanded to other things. And I'm dying to know what drove that, but we're not going to get into that on the podcast. Probably having kids maybe, but anyway.
There's still a little bit of country in there, but
and we learned that DJX may not be the friendly voice we thought, but that's a TBD. Watch this space for maybe evil.
Might be behind mass layoffs.
Yeah. Evil DJ X. Don't let the friendly voice fool you. Okay. Good stuff. All right. Well, hey, thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll see you next time on Last IT Podcast in the World. Over and out.